Okay, so I am at Dollar Tree and we are going to run in and see if we can't find a book to read as part of the Dollar Tree Reading Challenge portion of my channel. So there's not a ton of selection and everything's kind of picked over here, but I kind of grabbed a few that looked remotely interesting and I think I am going to go with this one. So we will talk about that more in a little bit. Okay, so I am back out to the Jeep with my pick, which is Every Time You Go Away by Beth Harbison. It's a novel, obviously, but it is about a character named Willa whose husband had suddenly passed, and she goes to spend one last summer at their beach house as she prepares to sell it, and it's about love, loss, moving on, letting go. I don't know, of my limited options in that store, this one seemed pretty good, something along the easy reads that I would do in between some of my heavier reading. So I'm going to give it a try, and I will be back to let you know what I thought of my Dollar Tree pick. Okay, so it's time for the grand finale of book number 1 from the Dollar Tree, the review. Again, Beth Harbison's Every Time You Go Away. I know this is backwards for you, sorry. I have a new camera set up, but I want to get this recorded quick while it's fresh in my mind, because I tend to read so much that if it's not something that really stood out to me, I'm going to forget about it in 3 days. So, quick read. Absolutely. I started it Thursday. I read about 20 pages Thursday. I read a little bit on Friday, a little bit Saturday morning, maybe a tiny bit Saturday night before bed, and then I had about 20 pages left to finish Monday, because holiday weekend is when I read this, and we were just busy and out of town for half of the weekend. So very quick read, not necessarily a great thing, but it was quick, it was easy. So I'm gonna put the Amazon prices up here. I took a screenshot of the pricing across all formats on Amazon so you can see it. I spent $1.08 on this book with tax, and to me personally, that's what it was worth. I wouldn't pay these Amazon prices for this. I did read some other reviews, and they were brutal. People either really loved this, found it like super heartfelt and heartwarming and touching and wonderful, or people really hated this and said it was very different than everything else she's written. I have no experience with this author. I think if I saw another book of hers, I would read something to see if it really is that different and what I actually think of her as an author, because I don't think this is necessarily a fair judgment based on the reviews I've read and not knowing anything else about her. So, synopsis: the story is about Willa, who lost her husband 3 years ago. They had a beach house in Ocean City, Maryland. Oh my God. Which is where he happened to pass away. So in the 3 years since he passed, Willa hasn't been back there, and she decided that it's finally time she got her shit in her life together and get back there and get the beach house ready to sell, because she doesn't want to be there anymore because of what happened. And they have a son that was 14 at the time. The husband, Ben, passed, and Willa's been feeling like an absentee mother and knows that in that respect she also needs to get her shit together, because it's not fair to their son, Jamie. So she heads to the beach house and realizes, after having a realtor walk through, what a big job it's going to be, and she decides she needs help. So she basically calls and whines and begs the son to get there to help her. Kind of guilts him into it a little bit. And he's dealing with stuff at home, but all of a sudden he goes from dealing with stuff at home to being at the beach house. This is written like back and forth between Willow's character and Jamie's character, and it's kind of an odd transition back and forth, almost like it was written by two different people, not just in the perspective of two different characters like you would normally see in a book that jumps back and forth. But so Jamie shows up, they get started, but Jamie basically disappears, like goes off to the boardwalk and gets a job. Doesn't really so much help out around the house, because the plumber Dave, who's the second character we meet, randomly offers Jamie to set him up with some relations restaurant for a job. Kind of odd. But Willa convinces her friend Kristen, who used to come spend time during the summer with them and her husband and whatnot at the beach house, to come help her also. So Kristen shows up, and I would have liked to have seen more of Kristen's character, to see her develop more. But Kristen shows up, and then Kristen's daughter Kelsey shows up. Kelsey and Jamie knew each other as kids, obviously, because their parents were close friends. And Kelsey and Jamie always got along as children, but they haven't seen each other as almost grown adults. So we end up with this little, like, side story of their more adult friendship, but we get little tiny glimpses of it. Basically what I would have liked to have seen is like this much of this book, the first part condensed into about this much, and then all of this added to the backside of the story. There was way too much of this part getting to this part, which is where it got good. I understand that the purpose of the story was following Willa and how she grieved and how she felt about her grieving and how she was stuck. And in her being stuck, Ben's ghost spirit, however you want to look at it, she has conversations with him. She sees him. She kind of thinks she's nuts for a bit, but it's not really fantasy or occult. It's only touched on a little bit, and it's not really like overwhelming in your face too much. But supposedly he's there to help her move on and realize that she needs to move on. And but really, this book could have been a novella. Like, a lot of it could have been eliminated, and really, once we had the characters developed, we really could have expanded on them at the backside and saw where they went from here. Because the getting to the point they were at the very end was somewhat long and drawn out. Not a very breezy, light, happy, peppy beach read. I mean, you wouldn't really expect it from something that was about grief and loss and moving on, but I expected more, just based on what I had read about it before I read. I expected it to be a little bit more lighthearted than it was. So overall, I'm going to give this like 3 out of 5. I'm going to be glad I only spent $1 on it. It's not going to dissuade me from continuing the Dollar Tree reads. That's something I'm committed to doing, just because I think it'll be interesting along the way to see what I can find there, what it's worth somewhere else, and, you know, take it from there. But if you've had any kind of recent grief or loss, I highly do not recommend you read this. And You know, if anybody really loves her and hasn't read this one, I'd be happy to send you this copy because I'm not going to read it again. It's going to get donated fairly quickly here. Probably after I'm done with everything for June, this will get donated out. But, so yeah, not terrible, not great. I don't have regrets from reading it, but I certainly wouldn't spend the $10.95 or whatever Kindle wanted me to spend on it to read it. So that is it. I will be back next month with a Dollar Tree read, and I will be back next week with my Book of the Month read. So, thank you.